Good evening. My name is Jim Alatris. I am the co-chair of the Complete Count Commission. Thank you all for being here on a beautiful summer night with us. This issue is that important that we're glad you joined us. Before we turn it over to County Executive Latimer, I'd like to turn it over to my co-chair, the Secretary of State, for a brief statement. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, and also thank you for being here. I wanted to take a moment to ask you to join us in a moment of silence for our colleague, Hector Figueroa, who was a member of our commission, but who also was an amazing labor leader in New York. I attended his memorial yesterday, which was very well attended, and I just wanted to say that I just wanted to share, I'm on the Port Authority board, and last year the workers from his union were coming around to meet with the commissioners, and I spoke to Hector and I said, you don't need to meet with me. I'm already on your side. I'm supportive. And he said, no, I want you to meet with the members. I want you to let them make their pitch. I want them to be in the room with you. And I just kind of pulled back and said, this is what Hector was, right? To make sure that you get people in the room. So in honor of him, I would like for you to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We have a jam-packed meeting today. We have a bunch of presentations from our colleagues in higher education to talk about their efforts on the census. And then we have a series of pre-registered public comments, which we always love, and some folks will still walk in and sign up. A quick note, there is a clock there that has 3. It will wind down to 0 in 3 minutes. That gentleman sitting there is smiling now, Lee. If it gets to 0, he stops smiling at you. He's not very nice. Not that he doesn't want you to keep talking, but we want to make sure we give everybody an opportunity to speak and be heard. So we hold to the 3-minute thing. If you have longer testimony that you'd like to submit to the record, send it our way, and everything gets posted on our website. So even if you don't have it tonight, always please feel free to submit it then afterwards. So with that, we'd like to call up your great county executive who's been doing a tremendous amount of work in this area and really helping the state and local partners ensure that every resident of the state is counted. We'd like to call up your great county executive, George Latimer.
I see that clock that says 3 minutes, my God.
I think
I can clear my throat in 3 minutes.
Point of order, County Executive. You have as much time as you like because you're paying our bill today, so that's great.
Outside of groans in the audience. In any event, Dr. Malatros, Madam Secretary, the members of the committee, Dr. Beveridge, I'd love to welcome you to Westchester, but you're already welcomed presence in Westchester on a continual basis from where you live and where you practice your work, and the work that you've done on behalf of the people of this county is already gratefully appreciated. And we really do appreciate you having a public hearing here in Westchester. As I look around the room, you're going to see the faces of a host of different people who represent different parts of this county. And so my comments will be general in nature, but you'll hear more specific examples of what our challenge here is in this county. But we're very grateful for your leadership and the leadership of Governor Cuomo in impaneling this committee. And we have followed the lead by impaneling a Westchester County Complete Count Census 2020 committee, and we're very grateful that a number of our municipalities, which we're encouraging, are also doing the same. And I see you have Joan Thomas here from the Village Board of Portchester, which probably has the local committee that's off to the races the fastest. And I suspect that all of us will be working in harness to help you accomplish the mission that you've been tasked with. We all understand that there's over 100 federal programs that total billions of dollars of aid that are allocated based on census data. And at the risk of going over ground, as you've already heard in other hearings, that includes the way allocations are made for Medicaid and Medicare, highway planning and construction, public transit, Pell Grants for higher education, community development block grants for infrastructure, small business development, school lunches, Head Start, special education programs, disabled veterans outreach, SNAP, the food stamp program, historic preservation, a host of different issues, a host of different programs that are allocated based on census data. We ourselves just recently received authority from Albany to share new sales tax revenue with the municipalities, and we were required by law to use the 2010 census for the basis of that allocation to municipal governments and to school districts. And as we looked at them, knowing the county as well as I do, I immediately saw where an undercount deprives community A or community B of revenue that they both need and deserve to have on the basis of the number of people that are in there. New York clearly is one of the largest donor states in terms of federal taxes paid, and compared to receiving funding back from our counties to our local governments is much less. And so we think that the complete count effort, if we can effectively be a partner with you in accomplishing that, will help balance that point. We have in the city of Yonkers what we're told is the most difficult census tract to cover in the state, or in the state outside of New York City. I'm not sure how the calibration is. But we have also identified in Mount Vernon, in Portchester, a number of other communities, census tracts that have very difficult to count areas. So we know that we have to make an extra effort. And we know that that extra effort will come with the state's direction and leadership, and the state's funding, and as well the county's involvement and the municipal government involvement, because we know that we need both good data, and we also need feet on the street in order for this count to work. And it is the first time that I've ever seen, I've been through a couple of census before, where there's this kind of willingness and energy at the local levels of government, the counties, the villages, the towns, the cities, to help make this complete count happen, and to do the things that are within our authority and power to do, the kind of public information campaigns that we can help conduct, the kind of outreach in targeted communities through the churches and the synagogues, through the local neighborhood associations, through the tenant associations, all strategies that have never been used in the past that are at our fingertips to use if we can just coordinate our effort together, and that's what our intent is. And the county government is willing to be a working partner. We don't have to lead the parade. We just are happy that there will be a parade and that this will help us get to a proper count. I do understand that there are at least 7 communities in Westchester that have empaneled Census 2020 committees, and a number of them are in those communities that have the greatest number of the potential for undercount, for those constituencies and demographics that we think will be undercounted. We do look forward to the state for resources. The county intends to allocate resources. I believe you're going to hear from our Commissioner of Planning, Norma Drummond, in a little bit. We have not finalized by any means yet our 2020 budget for Westchester County, but we intend to put money aside for this purpose, and we intend also to come knocking on the door of the state, not just to get money, but to get money against a plan that we think will be workable, that will really help us reach those portions of Westchester County. And I know since your scope is statewide, you're hearing the same thing in Erie County, you're hearing the same thing in Suffolk County, in the 5 boroughs of New York City as well, so that New York as a total entity gets the funding that we need. We appreciate your leadership. Again, we appreciate the governor's leadership. We stand ready to work with you. The leaders of our committee, Edgar Santana and Carola Bracco, are people active in the community and also active in government and not-for-profit work. We put together, we hope, a very workable group of people, and we're very happy to work with you. So we thank you for being here in Westchester. We thank you for listening to the testimony of my neighbors and friends, and together I'm very confident that we'll do an effective job on behalf of the people of our state, our county certainly, in counting everybody who's here and making sure that Westchester counts. Thank you very much for your leadership.
Thank you, Mr. Transit. Executive Latimer, I'd like to start with our formal presentations. First up, Mary Beth LeBate from KQ, the colleges, the independent colleges. And just before Ms. LeBate starts, we are being live webcast today, so if you can't sleep when you get home, you can watch it again.
Hello, everyone. Everyone hear me all right? You won't be missing much if you can. Closer in the mic. Okay, I do not have a PowerPoint. That is Dr. Malatras' bailiwick, and I didn't want to compete with him. But I want to thank the Commission for having me here today, Secretary Rosario, Dr. Malatras. I am Mary Beth LeBate, and I am the President of the Commission on Independent Colleges and Universities. We are a association of 100+ private not-for-profit colleges and universities in New York State. So while we don't have jurisdiction over those schools, we do attempt to represent their interests and bring them together for common cause. Our schools represent about 98% of all students who are attending private not-for-profit colleges in New York. On behalf of CICU's member campuses, I'm really grateful that the Commission is doing this. Let me give you a little profile of higher ed, and I'm sure my colleagues at SUNY and CUNY will add to this. There are about in New York State, there are about 1.2 million degree-seeking students in the state. Private not-for-profit colleges have about 500,000 of those students. Sorry about that. Of those 500,000 students, about 300,000 of them are native New Yorkers. The other 200,000 come from either internationally or from other states. I think what's really interesting with respect to the census is that we are the #1 state for students coming into our state for higher education. We are the #2 state internationally. We think because of this, we are a particularly important demographic that we want to focus on, and we're really pleased that the Commission is focusing on us. We've already begun to collaborate with the Commission. Rich Tobey reached out to us. We were thrilled to do so. One of the very first things we did, and it seems like a simple effort, but when you have 100 disparate universities and don't necessarily have governing authority over them, one of the very first things we have done is we have asked all of our schools to have a contact person. And so that when the Census Bureau comes and wants to work with our schools to start the count, we will have that information. We've gathered that information, we've provided it to Rich, and we hope that it'll really help expedite the engagement. I think the other thing I want to point out, we also would really appreciate, and Rich and I have been discussing this, we'd love to collaborate with SUNY, CUNY, and the Commission to develop a toolkit of ideas for our campuses. Our campuses are very eager to engage. They are by their very nature civic-minded. You have a population that understands the importance of an accurate count. And I think we really look forward to working with the Commission and exchanging ideas on how to really energize that. One of the other issues that I know that I've been talking to with the Commission is college students as an immense pool of potential census volunteers and workers. For many, working on the census can be their first foray into civic engagement. Colleges and universities are deeply embedded in their communities and also house experts in a variety of languages, cultures, and we would really look forward to either paid, unpaid job opportunities, and really being a vital asset to our communities and ensuring that not only is the count happening on campus, but that the count is happening in the communities. I think one of the biggest challenges that we've discerned from our initial discussions with that Rich has helped to facilitate with the Census Bureau is kind of their time frame. We want to have a very robust count of students on campus. Our understanding is the Census Bureau does not plan to reach out to our campuses until January of 2020. Mr. Malatras is in higher ed. That's way too late. It's too late for most industries. It's certainly, I think, too late for higher education. That's one of the reasons we went out and did that first step for them, which was to get the contact information. So to the extent that the Commission can really encourage earlier outreach to our campuses, I think that would be critical. January is a very busy time for them. If you can get them during some downtime when students aren't there so that they have a very full understanding of what is expected of them, I think that's really important. We're again working with Rich to try to get some webinars now between the Census Bureau and the campuses so that they're not hit with all of this in January of 2020. We know they want to help. They're very excited about it, but you have to give them appropriate lead time. I think the other issue that we've heard from our campuses that we just want, I'm sure the Commission is sensitive to, is the whole issue of privacy. We've talked to the Census Bureau a bit about the ways that data can be collected. One of those tools is through electronic sharing by the campuses. I don't think many of our campuses would take that offer up, because I think they have some real legal and ethical issues on sharing of data, and B, because they don't necessarily have in an electronic format everything that the Census Bureau might be wanting. But that's by no means to suggest they will not, pursue vigorously the other options that will be out there for the count. With that, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I, again, would really encourage, I thank you for engaging us early in the process. Our schools are very jazzed up about it. We really look forward to sharing some best ideas. I think if my simple mind is you buy kids some pizza and they'll come anywhere to fill out so that's my strategy, is buying pizza for kids. But I want to thank you. Just please know that we're a resource and we really look forward to it, and thanks for what you're doing here.
That too is, we're going to do questions right now, if you don't mind, Mary Beth, if you would answer some questions, please. For the record, Rich Toby also goes where pizza is too. That's how we get him to meetings. Before I turn it over to my fellow commissioners, one of the things we're doing, staff is now pulling together our report. Part of this is recommendations, but part of it is really trying to do a roadmap and a blueprint in great detail. And we did some analysis when I was at the Rockefeller Institute about individual census tracts. And one of the main areas of concern, as you raised, that I think our friends at SUNY are going to raise too, students are often undercounted just due to the nature of where they are, they're resident-based. I run a school which is even different. We're a mostly adult learner, not distributed model where we have little places all over the state. It makes it more difficult, but we're sort of the front lines of this as many ways. Can you provide, I think part of this is we want to pinpoint specific areas with great detail. Here's a college, here's a contact, here's going to do the outreach. And when we map it out, we want to see where there's holes. So then we can go back to the state and say, hey, this is how you should actually use your resources. You need to put a person in the North Country because there's a hole doing this effort. Or one of a municipal part, same thing, right? Can we get that type of information out of your many schools, that level of detail, even points of contact? That way we can have it all in one place. We can map it out and say, here are where our holes are. Here's where some of our problems are really going to be. And I think to your second point, which I think we can work into our report, and I think we've already been talking about this, and I think soon we'll also talk about this. I think we're going to begin the outreach effort as a mandate from the state much earlier in this fall, which will, of course, work with you all on, because I think you're right, January is too late. Is August the right time when no one's paying attention? No, but probably September is the time when people want to pay attention. So can we get that type of information?
Yeah.
How much can we get?
We can certainly get you contact information. We have most of that. I think those contacts will be in a good position to give you a sense of where the gaps are. They certainly can do that on campuses. And I think they know their communities well. They know the surrounding communities. They know where their students are. For the most part, they'll know where their students live, who wouldn't be counted in the group quarters, but nonetheless, we want to make sure there's a count of them. I think the interesting thing is, because this only happens every 10 years, when we first approached the campuses, they said, well, these kids won't be counted here. They'll be counted where they're domiciled. They are domiciled here. So I think just that even getting that awareness out there was an important first step to getting schools to think about it. So yeah, I think we'll definitely get you as much contact information, and I think you'll find those folks really able to pinpoint.
I'm sure you'll take us up on the offer, but part of what the staff is doing now as well is taking a lot of, CUNY has a good data mapping thing as well as the SUNY Rockefeller mapping. We did the top 500 hardest to count index. And within those are not just SUNY schools, there are independent colleges and universities just by nature. We want to work with you on those schools as well to probably highlight and give a little extra attention to.
Yep.
I don't know what that means yet, but we want to make sure that those schools are involved in that hard to count process as well. I'll turn over to any of my colleagues.
Yeah, I just want to say that you should definitely try to get the students to count at their dorms. Because first off, that's what they're supposed to do. But secondly, New York State is the only state that is potentially going to lose 2 congressional seats. And if in fact you could get a few 100,000 more out of your students, and CUNY could get a few, and SUNY could get a few, it might actually give New York State another congressman. So,
Absolutely, and that's why I noted in my testimony, we are a main attraction for students out of state and internationally, and we should fully
even the
leverage that.
international students say everyone should count.
Yep, absolutely.
I want to thank you for the cooperation. It's been extraordinary. We laid out 4 potential things that the colleges could do, and I think you've enthusiastically embraced them all. Getting students jobs so they can do the count, getting student leadership to help, particularly with off-campus housing, the contacts, and the group quarters program that the Census Bureau has going to be undertaking, which is still somewhat confusing as to how they're going to do it. But we really look forward to working with you, and thank you for the high level of cooperation. We couldn't have done this without you. We already have contacts for over 80 of the 100 schools.
Well, thank you very much.
Good, thank you.
Next up, from the State University of New York system, Hank Bennett.
I can get this PowerPoint to work. Thank you, President Walatris and Madam Secretary and other members of. Oh, a little bit louder. Thank you, and other members of the commission. We at SUNY are very excited to be part of this process. And by the way, Hank Bennett, and I'm a deputy to our Chief Operating Officer, Bob Magna. We're very excited to be part of this process. What I want to show you here is the beginning of our outreach plan that we're developing for this. Kind of give you some high-level points on this. So we begin our plan by looking at what the actual footprint is. Many of you know this already, but SUNY has 64 campuses, 11 doctoral granting, 13 comprehensive, 7 techs, 30 community colleges, 4 other colleges. Part of the challenge that we have is that students live in the residence halls that are state operated, and that's the ones that are owned by SUNY. There are also students who live in the Greek housing. There are students who live in off-campus housing, apartments, and things like that. We're already going through a process of gathering those names that we're getting to, Rich Toby and others, to begin to build that network. But we also have people who are on our community colleges as well. In the fall of 2018, we had approximately 87,000 students who were living on our campuses. So that's a good place to start. Overall at SUNY, we have about 424,000 students who are enrolled at any one time. We wanted to show you some of the demographics that they have. If you have about 54% female, 45% male, 82% of the SUNY students stay in New York post-graduation. Part of the important point on that is that SUNY's core mission is about economic development, and having every student count is important to having, as you're talking about, members in Congress to get funding to continue to do economic development. So that's part of our core mission, and that's why we believe in this. Additionally, some other diversity issues. So we certainly support SUNY. We've seen growth in the diversity of our campuses, and so this is an important part of why we want to make every student count. So we're going to be involving our employees in this process. We have 91,000 employees overall. About 32,000 of those employees are faculty. About 58,000 are non-faculty. You can see how they're split between our state-operated and community colleges, and then a small component at system administration. As Rich was talking about as well, part of the process is going to be doing this group quarters program, which is counting the students who are on our campuses in campus housing. We're also going to be focusing on off-campus housing. So the difference is that SUNY is usually we're planning on leading that process for the group quarters program from the administration, where we'll be doing the overall messaging. We'll be doing periodic check-ins throughout this entire process. We've already started to reach out to our residence life people to coordinate this, as well as with our student assembly. So some of the outreach opportunities that you've already talked about, we're going to be talking to our students, and our students are very excited about the potential job opportunities. I believe they're actually pretty well-paying jobs that they'll be able to work at. We'll be doing other general outreach opportunities, making sure that they're aware of the civic duty that comes from participating in the census. So we're also going to be working with our campuses and to begin talking with them about large social media pushes and other actual activities and events to build awareness. Finally, some of the groups that we've targeted to work with are our various unions, and as well as our faculty council, our faculty senate. We begin the outreach process to them as well. Our student assembly, of course, as I said, is very excited, and so I wanted to give a chance for our president, Austin, of our student assembly to speak to you and give you some of his thoughts.
Thank you so much, Hank, and thank you to the Commission for the time. I think there are a number of ways in which our organization can help SUNY in ensuring that every student across our campuses, including students who live off campus, are counted. One of those key areas is education on the importance of the census and the tangible benefit being counted has for them as students and as residents of our state. And towards that end, we plan throughout the academic year to partner with our on-campus student government organizations and student groups across our campuses to have tabling opportunities and on-campus literature distribution so that students understand what the census is and why it's so important for them to participate. We're also going to work to counteract any concerns certain students may have about being counted, particularly for our undocumented students, which is just as essential to be counted as any other student. So we can work as a student body to ensure that all of our students understand that submitting the census form is safe and only has positive benefits for the entire student community. We also will work to, on a larger scale, bring, through our formal events throughout the year, to bring in outside speakers and potentially representatives from the Commission and others in the Department of Labor working on the census to speak to the combined student body of the SUNY system in support of filling out the census reports. We also see a role for ourselves in recruiting students to work as enumerators. I understand that it's very competitive pay, and a lot of our students would enjoy the flexibility and high-paying nature of the position of working as an enumerator in some of our communities across the state. I've already, by putting out feelers, ascertained that there's significant interest in serving in some of those roles. I know that some of them are starting now, so we're going to work to get that information out. And we are just available as a partner for the dissemination of information to students across the SUNY system. And we look forward to partnering with SUNY and other external entities to ensure that all of our students are indeed counted.
Yeah, don't go yet.
You get to stand up there and answer questions too. Hank, we started talking as a commission about the SUNY, CUNY, and independent systems of higher education from the outset, from our first hearings, which we think, given the diversity and just the numbers, it's a potential benefit. Is there a role, besides just hiring students to be enumerators, is there an academic component, experiential learning component, maybe not for credit, but some sort of certification or credentialing that makes it a public service sort of credential that might incentivize students to do this? Is there any way of doing that, or something we can look into?
Sure, Austin can speak to this as well, but we, as you know, we have programs like at the University of Albany, where we have quite a bit of educational opportunities, and at various levels, from the bachelor's, master's, and doctorate level. There are professors who study this on a regular basis that we'll bring in to talk to our student body, talk to the leadership throughout the entire school. So yes, and we're also looking into potential for things like, we're always looking into things like micro-credentials and things like that that can add to people's education. If it's focused on something like the census, that would be fantastic. So.
Found, and you may not know this, it just might be anecdotal evidence, Austin. What do you think is the prime barrier to getting students to fill out a census form? Is it just lack of awareness, fear, like you said, of undocumented? Is there something you're finding in your student government position that you see, because you now travel the entire system and see it on a daily basis, that is potential red flags for this commission that we would have to address in a report to demonstrate a student commitment?
Sure. So first I'd say that our youngest students are 17 years old. So the last time there was a census, they were 7. And they likely weren't aware that it was happening. So I think there's an educational component because it's so infrequent, the census, to make students aware of what it is and what the purpose of the census is. And I think we could all play a role in that. And I imagine that efforts from various entities will ramp up over the coming months to ensure that that broad public engagement happens. But I think a larger obstacle, even once that engagement happens, and this is already a question I've heard, is should I be counted at home or should I be counted at my on-campus or off-campus address? And students traditionally consider the residence of their family to be their home address. And that also applies for voter registration, which is the other area we often get that question. So I think the education and the encouragement needs to come from SUNY, from campuses, and from us to ensure that they are submitting the form for their on- or off-campus residence, regardless of what their family is filling out back home.
Any questions from my fellow commissioners?
That was going to be my question about whether they're aware that they should fill it out, or they assume that their parents are filling it out. So I think you answered that. Thank you.
Austin, could you give your current title with SUNY? I think we kind of swallowed it, and the panel understands, but I'm not sure everyone else does. So can you tell us that you serve on the SUNY board on behalf of the students?
So I'm the president of the SUNY Student Assembly, which is the representative student governance body for SUNY's 1.2 million degree and continuing education students. By virtue of that position, I am also the student member of the SUNY Board of Trustees and a member of the Higher Education Services Corporation Board of Trustees as well.
Austin won both the electoral vote as well as the electoral college candidate. For the record. So he's a legitimate president. So thank you, Austin. With that, before I get myself in trouble as the council is looking at me, thank you for appearing. We're going to be reaching out, of course, as we finalize the report, especially in our campuses. I think there's a lot. I mean, we say there's a SUNY system, but many of the campuses are very distinct. If you're in Jamestown versus the North Country or in the city at Maritime, right, it's just a far different type of campus, so there's different needs. So thank you for your willingness to attend today, and we'll be in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. We'd like to move now to the public comment portion. We're going to go in the order on the list of how they came in. First up is Terry Kirchner, from the Westchester Library System.
Thanks. So good evening. My name's Terry Kirchner. I'm the Executive Director of the Westchester Library System, which is actually a complete count committee. But I'm also a member of the Westchester County Complete Count Committee, as well as the Westchester County Board of Legislators Family Task Force and the nonprofit Westchester, which is a group of 168 nonprofits here in Westchester. I bring that forward just to show that there is real shared passion here in Westchester to move forward on the census. We want to make sure that everybody does get counted as part of the process. So while we recognize that there are a lot of advantages to the online approach, we are concerned, clearly, about how do we make the public comfortable with the online approach. How do we really address the need for resources so that the hard-to-count communities, as well as everyone, can get counted? We have a lot of difficulty next year, with trust, quite honestly. So I think that's going to be one of the biggest issues, and it's something that I think we would all have to figure out how at the state level, county level, local level, do we bring trust back into the arrangement of the census. One of our efforts that we want to really think about is how do we find the resources so that we really can support the hard-to-count communities the best. There were some funds that were set aside as part of the state budget. It's not clear to us how we actually get access to those funds, and I know that's something you're looking for. But the more that it can be straightforward and simple, especially considering the limited resources many of the organizations in those hard-to-count communities have. That would be appreciated. Having applied for state funds, sometimes it can be very complicated. So anything that could streamline that effort would be greatly appreciated. So I know you have a lot of other speakers, so I'll leave it at that, but thank you.
Very much. Now you left the minute on the table, which is good. That doesn't get pushed anywhere else. That just gets lost. I'd like to call up Patricia Keegan, representative for U.S. Representative Nita Lowey.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Keegan. I'm district director for Congresswoman Nita Lowey, who's in Washington tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to submit testimony before the New York State Complete Count Commission on behalf of Congresswoman Nita Lowey. The Commission is doing critical work to prepare for the 2020 census, ensuring that we get an accurate count. The 2020 census is a serious constitutional obligation that will shape how federal dollars are shared nationwide for the next decade. That means it determines how much each community receives for schools, roads, health care, and other public services that my constituents rely on daily. Particularly for our communities in New York State, which, as we know, send more money to the federal government than we receive, it is essential that we get our fair share of federal support. For example, in fiscal year 2016, New York State received more than $73 billion through 55 federal spending programs guided by data derived from the 2010 census. In Washington, I have opposed the Trump administration's efforts to limit participation in the census at every turn. In fact, before the Supreme Court ruled against the administration, as chairwoman of the House Appropriations Committee, I ensured that the House-passed funding bill supporting the census blocked the citizenship question by law. Additionally, the House bill included a $4.6 billion increase for the census. We can't get an accurate count without adequate funding. Unfortunately, this administration chose to play political football with a fundamental function of our government by attempting to add the nefarious citizenship question. It was an unnecessary addition and a clear attack on immigrant and other minority communities. Thankfully, through litigation and our efforts in Congress to keep the pressure on, this question will not be included. While the absence of the citizenship question on the census is a victory, we still have a long way to go, which makes the New York State Complete Count Commission so vital. So too is the work already taking place in my congressional district by the Rockland Complete Count Committee, the Westchester Complete Count Committee, and those in some local communities, including Portchester. We must ensure that people feel safe enough to participate in the census by coordinating with local stakeholders to get the word out and make sure groups are vulnerable to underestimation are heard. I stand ready to support these important efforts in any way that I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, Robin Mack. Rich scared Robin Mack away. Caleb Hirsch.
Good evening, Madam Secretary, Dr. Malatras, members of the Commission. My name is Caleb Hirsch, addressing this Commission on behalf of Westchester County Legislator Catherine Borgia. Legislator Borgia represents a district that includes the town and village of Ossining, the village of Croton, and parts of the city of Peekskill, the town of Cortland, and the village of Briarcliff Manor. I also add that she is the chair of the Budget Appropriations Committee on the board and the co-chair of the Families Task Force, which Mr. Kirshner mentioned. in his testimony. Legislator Borges' district was supposed to have 58,516 people in it in 2010, according to the Westchester County Charter. In reality, when we last counted everyone 9 years ago, we know that that number was likely higher. Census tracts in parts of Ossining, Cortland, and Peekskill that Legislator Borges represents have historically been undercounted. By the Census Bureau's own data, nearly 1 in 5 people in our district lived in a census tract with an initial response rate in 2010 of less than 75%. It is cruelly ironic that many of the places that need the most public assistance are also the most undercounted. This impairs the ability of already struggling communities to get critical aid. Many residents in our district struggle with poverty and lack of internet access, making it difficult for them to obtain critical census information. Many of our residents are immigrants. The understandable fear of government faced by many in light of the federal immigration crackdown virtually guarantees an undercount of immigrant residents, unfortunately, in our district, even without a citizenship question. Now, this past year, New York, including this commission, has chosen to lead in many areas of policy where the federal government has not. Now, we ask, must also be one of these times. Any additional resources, and not just material or in personnel, but also intellectual, that your commission can push the way of Westchester County and to its municipalities will go to good use. $880 billion, almost $1 trillion in funding, as well as, of course, the guarantee of political representation itself depend on everyone getting counted. And 58,000 people in our district, in District 9, and almost certainly more, are constitutionally entitled to a voice through our census. And so we ask just to please see to it that we are heard. Thank you very much.
Don't go anywhere for 1 second. Part of what we're trying to do, and many other partners as well, is to figure out those communities to target. The interesting part is we have to use census data to figure out those communities, right? There's this sort of circular nature to it. You don't have to answer tonight, but it would be good to get for the commission. We've asked others too. In Erie County, we had this conversation because the communities are changing, but not necessarily reflected in the census data. If there are new communities or folks coming into your district, it would be good to know what those communities are, because they may not be reflected in the numbers that we're looking at, but maybe where we want to target some of our activities in a different way. So we'll just reach out, and Toby can do that. Rich Toby can do that for you, our executive director. But I think that sort of emerging communities concept is important. Not only are they probably new to your community, they already have that challenge. Now we're going to add the challenge of, oh, by the way, here's this census thing, and I know you might be a little apprehensive of it because some may not even be aware that the citizenship question is off. Some people might still assume it's on. We've been grappling with that as a commission. How do you deal with this issue that may not be resolved in the public's mind, although it's been resolved judicially, at least that we think of now? So I leave that with you. It would be good to get some of those emerging communities for the committee.
Oh, absolutely, and we're working very closely with our partners to make sure that we have.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, Joan Genoese Thomas. Oh, good.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak before you this evening. My name is Joan Grosjenois Thomas.
Well, I hacked that to death.
You were close.
I apologize.
You were that close.
My name is Jim Malatras to many people, so I apologize.
I feel you. I'm with you. I am the co-chair of the Portchester 2020 Complete Count Committee. I am also the recently elected trustee for the Village of Portchester and default liaison between the village and our Census Committee. I cannot stress enough how important it is, or it's going to be at the local level, for those of us whose feet are on the ground, working in communities such as Portchester. Terry Kirshner also just made recommendation about having a seamless and an easy funding method. That's going to be incredibly important. But some of if I can bring it down to this ground level, it is incumbent upon us at the local level to build trust, and that is going to take Herculean effort. We're going to need to knock on doors and talk to everyone in every place every time that we can. to sort of build that trust and make folks aware of what the census means and how it directly impacts their life. Many people don't understand that, and that is going to be a tremendous conversation. The other issue that we face, particularly in Portchester, is the informal, albeit sometimes illegal, housing circumstances that we have. We have property owners who have subdivided and even subdivided large homes where they're renting out just rooms, and folks are sharing the kitchen and the bathroom facilities. They don't necessarily know each other. They don't necessarily, represent each other. And we have this archaic system where a head of household is supposed to be filling out the census for the people in that household. That doesn't exist in many of our residences in Portchester. So I just wanted to sort of bring it down to that level for you, and also to let you know that some of the strategies that we are using is going to be through our school system. We plan on doing a census awareness week in our schools from elementary through high school. So that'll include not just backpack flyers and such, but the census touches on all of our core subjects: math, English, art, history. And so we're looking for our education department to create curriculum around the census for that week, and then bookend it by reaching out to faith-based communities so that they have sermons in church, in the mosque, in the synagogue on the weekends before and after. So those are just some of the things that we're doing in Portchester. We are incredibly proud that we're probably the first municipality in Westchester to get started. We started working on this last fall, and we're happy to share some of our ideas. And we are looking forward to working not only with the state, but with the county as well. Thank you.
Before you go, first of all, everybody in the census world knows Portchester.
Yay!
So congratulations on the hard work you're doing. I just want to make a comment on the schools. The Census Bureau told us last night that they're preparing curriculum for the schools and should be rolling it out soon. So you may want to take a look at it and see what you're comfortable with and how you want to adapt it. So there should be a Census Bureau staff person here in Westchester. I'm not sure who. Oh, there's a hand way in the back.
Working with a couple of folks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So coordinate with them and see if it's something that you may want to use.
Right. We've divided our own committee into subcommittees. So there's a youth and education, there's faith-based, there's senior and vets. So we have those areas covered.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to say one thing. Strangely enough, years ago, I was the plaintiff's expert in the Portchester case. And
The voting rights case?
Voting rights case. And I want to congratulate you for getting on the board.
Thank you.
And
Thank you very much.
It looks to me like the board has become more diverse over time.
Yeah, it's turned around quite a bit.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Joan, too, won both the Electoral College and popular vote. Next up, Kate Permit. Can't use the same job. I know.
Thank you. My name is Kate Permit. I'm a longtime resident of Ossining. I come here, as many others do, wearing multiple hats. I'll say it's my Ossining resident hat, my Friends of Neighbors Link hat, and Carola Bracco, who's the co-chair of our local Westchester County Commission, is executive director of that, and also as my marketing hat. So first, resident of Ossining, we love Portchester. We're going to rip off all those ideas because we are a very diverse community. We have had in the last 10 years a large influx of immigrants. We just know because they opened restaurants and the food is great. So that's very important. Our schools are also bursting at the seams. So as far as we know, the use of resources is very important for Ossining residents. Wearing my hat as Friends of Neighbors Link, it's a wonderful community organization which now has locations serving our immigrant neighbors in both Mount Kisco, Ossining, Yonkers, and many programs around the county, including Portchester. We undertake all kinds of ESL language classes, citizenship classes, education about culture with different police forces. So we are very much invested in getting our immigrant neighbors counted and are participating with local municipalities to get that done. Pearl is really the expert. I know she'll provide that expertise as head of the commission for the county. So I'll talk about my marketing hat, which my background is from American Express, working for a research company and then teaching communications at Columbia. And I would just beg you never to use the word enumeration. Nobody knows what that means. As well as looking at the many audiences, for example, students. Why don't you have somebody come and talk about where the next NBA team may open up? It all depends on census data. And those kinds of activities that might have immediate interest to your audiences would be very wonderful to take advantage of. The last thing on that count would be, I do believe we're in an attention economy, and although the man who lost the Electoral College had created some tension around the census, perhaps we can put that to good use. And the census, to my mind, is more top of mind this year than in the last 2 decades when I've been an Ossining resident. We are getting committees organized on the local level, and so there is momentum, actually, for you to take advantage of, and I urge you to do so. Last comment with my last 20 seconds is send as much money Ossining's way as you possibly can, and we'll provide data to back that up. Thank you very much.
That will be a section of the report. Send as much money to Ossining as possible. Before we turn to the next person, I just wanted to recognize Assemblyman Steve Otis, who's in the audience, who's been enormously helpful in his community and beyond on making sure New York has a complete council. Let's give him a round of applause for He wanted to be quiet and just sit in the back, but I wouldn't let him do that. So next up, Alex Roy Meyer, Mayor.
Both are acceptable pronunciations of my last name. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alex Roythmayer, and I am the Chief of Staff for Assemblyman David Buchwald. The Assemblyman had a pre-existing commitment this evening and asked me to share with you his appreciation for the efforts of the Complete Count Commission in making to ensure all communities are accurately represented in the 2020 census. In particular, for conducting this hearing in his district, in particular benefit of the people of White Plains and Westchester County. Assemblyman Buchwald represents the 93rd Assembly District, which stretches from the city of White Plains north along Interstate 684 through the town of North Salem. Assemblyman Buchwald was a participant in a friend of the court brief to the U.S. Supreme Court in opposition to the addition of the citizenship question in the 2020 census. The court thankfully helped ensure that the citizenship question would not be included in the census, especially when the Census Bureau itself said that there are more accurate ways to determine citizenship figures. As the census preparations themselves, it is essential that New York State's efforts recognize that Westchester County has its share of hard communities to count. Assemblyman Buchwald represents not only downtown White Plains, which is a historically hard to count area, but also other additional locations with traditionally similarly low response rates, including Bedford Hills, Harrison, Mount Kisco, and North White Plains. Some of these locations are otherwise referred to as wealthy towns, but these neighborhoods should not be overlooked. According to the research by the Census Bureau, the reasons for the low response rates include changing household arrangements and distrust in the government, which we are seeing especially in immigrant communities where people are being warned not to open the door for government representatives. Given these challenges to door-to-door collections, it is essential that every effort be made to increase initial response rates. We encourage the Complete Count Commission to focus on tactics that increase initial response rates to ensure that all areas of Westchester and New York State are counted. The Assemblyman requests that the Complete Count Fund be allocated to the Westchester Library System, which is coordinating with libraries in our community to assist in the census outreach effort. The Commission should also encourage advocacy with civic organizations such as churches, chambers of commerce, schools to extend complete count outreach and identify and explain specific opportunities for people to be involved in the census. In closing, Assemblyman Buchwald's office stands ready to help in any way that we can support the complete count here in Westchester. Please do not hesitate to reach out. We'd be a willing partner. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Louise Chirico. Louise Chirico. Okay. Going once. Gerandi Martinez.
Hello, how are you? Can you hear me well? Thank you so much for letting me speak with you tonight. Hello, Secretary Bissell, how are you? Thank you to the Commission for having this. I'm Gerandi Martinez with the Community Resource Center in Mamaroneck. We are a nonprofit community-based organization in Mamaroneck for 21 years. We're part of the Complete Count County Commission or Coalition, and also a member of Nonprofit Westchester, a member of Hispanic Federation that's doing this work. And I'd like to urge you to consider the community-based organizations that are really doing the groundwork to build trust with our neighbors and especially immigrant neighbors. We actually had a Know Your Rights training last night where we had to do a lockdown to do a Know Your Rights training just so people would feel safe and pay attention to what we were saying. And in these moments, we're also talking about the census and how important it is. And the questions we're getting is, are you sure my information is going to get safe? Are you sure it's not going to get tapped into? Are you sure the citizenship question isn't going to be on there? And it's taking us extra time and energy and effort to convince our community members that it's going to be okay. And that it's important, and that the Head Start programs are the reason that we want to fill out the census, that Medicare and Medicaid are the reason we want to fill out the census, that public benefits are critical for our community and they need to be counted, and that their children need to be counted. So I really would urge any federal funding to come to our community-based organizations. Your dollars are well spent and valuable here. A lot of my colleagues are here and we're ready to do the groundwork. We've been here for 10 years doing it. We remember the last census and we're not going to give up, and this is going to be challenging, but we're ready for it. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Next, Norma Drummond, the Westchester County Department of Planning. Good evening.
Thank you for holding this evening's session. Every opportunity to raise awareness of the 2020 census in Westchester County can only help. I am Norma Drummond, Commissioner of Planning for Westchester County. The County Planning Department is the local census data affiliate. We use state census data as the backbone to make informed decisions every single day. The county, our municipalities, school districts, hospitals, nonprofit organizations, and citizens use census data to apply for grants and to direct resources where they are most needed. The data is also used to help resolve local issues and to help plan future development. From housing to transportation, healthcare, and education, census data is critical to the amount of federal funding spent in Westchester. While we applaud the Census Bureau's initiative to have almost everyone respond to postcards and answer the census online, there is a very real concern in Westchester, where over 16% of the population is over age 65, where almost 10% of the non-institutionalized population has a disability, and where 8.3% of our population lives in poverty. There is a very real concern that there is a significant portion of these special needs populations that may not be able to respond electronically. Though there may be some duplication, collectively, these special needs populations represent over 250,000 people, or more than 25% of the county's population. Many of them may not have access to or comfort with using computers. Yes, the county has established a complete count committee, and with one of its 5 subcommittees focusing on our seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities. So we will do our part to ensure these populations know it is safe, easy, and important to respond. But New York State also needs to focus a good portion of its resources to reaching these populations. Westchester is made up of 45 municipalities, including cities, towns, and villages. Boundaries cross over each other depending on whether you're talking about municipalities, school districts, zip codes, hamlets, whatever. Kids going to Ossining School District may live in the village of Ossining, the town of Ossining, the village of Briarcliff Manor, the town of Newcastle, or the town of Yorktown. My point is that Westchester County, in Westchester, the county government knows these jurisdictions best. But with the county's chief sources of revenue limited to our property and sales taxes, we have limited resources of our own and limited places to turn to fund efforts for the census. We need New York State's help. We stand ready to assist the state with this effort. Counting every single resident in Westchester and getting an accurate count is important to providing concrete numbers to bolster Westchester and New York State's requests for funding from the federal government to help our residents for the next decade. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next up, Carrie Cubillos.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carrie Cubillos. I'm part of the Westchester Library System. I work at the Austin Public Library for 22 years. One important comment that I have today is that I was involved, very involved, in 2010 census. At that point, our town, Ossining, the town of Ossining, have, if I'm not mistaken, 37% of Latino community in the school. This is the school count. At this point, we are double in numbers. We are a community, as well as the organization like Neighbors Link. We have many organizations that we can count on to this census happen. We have a few problems that are very difficult to sort. One of them is that the houses are rented to the Perez family. However, in this house can live 5 families, 4 families, which they will get one form to fill because it's one family registered, but the sub-families that live in that specific house are going to be ignored. So we have to find a way to locate these families, and I'm so happy to say that at that point, 2010, I was the only Spanish speaker. Now we have a lot of them, so we can reach out to them, but we need money. We need money to count with these people so they can go place by place. It was so difficult last census. I talked to everybody. I walked the streets, and people promised, yes, I'm going to do it. And almost at the end of the time, they didn't. So I put some tables outside of the library, and balloons, cookies for the kids, water, and I make it like a little party. So we got some more people. So we need to be very conscious about the fear that our communities are going through. It's tremendous. It's nothing like 9 years ago. At this point, people barely come out of the houses. At this point of time, we need all the support from the New York State in terms of funding. So I really appreciate everything that you guys can give us because we are ready to work. Many of the organization in Ossining, and we as a library, we are ready not only to tell the people you need to be count because you're 4 years old, next year is going to be in the school and for the next 10 years. So he needs to be count, otherwise it won't be a space for him at the school. So
Thank you
please,
very much. If you have more, please submit your testimony in writing, and thank you for participating.
okay, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Next is Mary Ellen Chomsky. Good evening.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for having this meeting. It's very important, very, very eye-opening. I'll be brief. I'm here as a concerned member of the public. I'm a lifelong resident of New York State, longtime resident of Westchester County. Very simply, I'm wondering if any of you have actually used the Commission's own website. Because before coming to the meeting this evening, and I had heard about the meeting through a third party, I went onto the website to take a look, and the website first says, not surprisingly, it says the Commission is holding public hearings and events to gain public input. And of course, that's very appropriate and laudable. And that sentence it's a live link, and it links to the list of your meetings. The meetings indicate the date and the place, but not the time of the meeting, which I got, as I said, from a third party. I then thought maybe I'll send a quick email to you just to point that out, because certainly if you're having meetings, it would be useful to know the time of the meeting. So I searched the website, and perhaps this is the only website I've ever used where I couldn't find a Contact Us section. Not on the top, not on the bottom, not anywhere. The contact information that's there is for the Commission members in their individual capacities, in their professional and work capacities. But I couldn't find any contact information, not even a snail mail address, for the Commission as such. And as a matter of fact, as to the person who just spoke before me, you asked her to submit her additional comments. And quite frankly, I'm wondering, where should she submit them? Where should anybody submit them? And other members of the public who perhaps couldn't be here this evening, or who might not be able to attend other meetings, where should they contact the Commission? Thank you.
Thank you for that.
We'll look, but just so you have it, I'm not saying the website's not clunky. It's hearing@labor.ny.gov, which is what I think is on the website. And if you want, you may email me at my email address. Many others have, and they're not shy about their feelings to me, especially Andy, who emails me regularly from the link. But we will make sure that if it's not as clear, we want to make it clear, because we do want people to submit, all kidding aside, as much information that you can ascertain. We want to have that. So it's good to know that you looked. So thank you for that.
And we
Here, so here we go. Ready? Hearing at the little @ sign, labor.ny.gov. That goes to the secretary's personal email, so she gets it at all hours of the night.
And we've got some personal business cards. I've got some business cards. If people want them, we'll give them out now. But we think there is a link, but I think it could be more obvious.
Right. You're right. Yes, very much so. So thank you for that. Next is Ariana Calderon. Not here? Not here? Okay.
She's here, but she doesn't want
Oh, got it. Okay. Last but not least, Nancy Barr. Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you so much to the Commission for coming here tonight and giving us this opportunity. My name is Nancy Barr. I'm a county legislator. I represent Rybrook, Port Chester, and Harrison. I'm very proud of Port Chester. Not that I can take any credit for it, but they've certainly really hit the ground running on this. I did not prepare remarks, but I did take some notes during this hearing, and I just wanted to make a few points, some of which have been made, but I'll just emphasize definitely the senior citizens issue, they're not going to do it online. The only way they'll do it online is if it's, they're sitting with somebody next to them, either at the library or the senior center or wherever you might find them. Otherwise, they are not going to be doing that. So I have talked to some of them, and, they also don't trust doing it online and so forth. They also have run into this problem, and I don't think this has been discussed at all tonight, but there is that alternate census that's on the off, well, I guess it's not only on the off years, or maybe it is, but it's coming out. People are getting it this year in 2019. And one of my constituents at the senior center told me she filled out this big, long census form, and does she still have to fill out the new one that comes out? And I think I only know because I happened to be in a committee meeting at the legislature. I understood what that was, but most people do not have any idea what that is and how it relates to the 2020 census. So I think that's really important information to get out to all the complete count committees if they don't know about it. On the point of immigrants, everything, that was said already obviously is true. I would like to have some suggestions on actually how to talk to people about how safe this is for them, because I know people who would like to volunteer to do, help people complete the census, but they don't feel that they can honestly say that this data is going to be safe. And, when you're taking someone's their life into your hands by telling them, oh, it's okay, fill this out, this information is not going to get into the wrong hands, you feel responsible. You could see that person get taken away a week later, So I think it's really important to explain to us how we can explain to them that this truly is safe. In terms of students and families, I thought the point made at the beginning is so important. People don't know this. Parents think their kids are counted in, the kids who are at college are counted at home. And we do have a lot of people in New York whose kids go out of state. I was glad to hear we have so many that come in, but that's critical. Okay, I'll have to go. I have some other comments. Maybe I'll write them down. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
County legislator made a point, a very good point, that these are information we like to get. Older residents have historically been overcounted in many cases, and they don't often get factored into the hard-to-count analysis. We have done some analysis starting at the Rockefeller Institute, adding older residents to the hard-to-count index because this is the first time it's going to be largely online. So there are many complicated factors that are going into the census: the citizenship question, on, off, immigrant communities, older residents. So there's many things that we have to really focus on. So thank you for raising attention to that. Does anyone else want to speak? Hold on one second. Hold on. Let's just do it orderly. Go ahead. You're first. It's the first time. Can I just say thank you for that, because no one on this commission ever tells me that. So thank you, please.
I'm just being obedient. My Jamaican parentage is proving to be of great benefit to me. Good evening. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I am Donovan Beckford. I'm the CEO and Executive Director for WestCOP. We're one of 48 community action agencies in New York State and one of 5 here in the Mid-Hudson Valley region. If you know anything about community action, we are anti-poverty agency. So we're working with somewhere between 18 and 20,000 people who are defined as poor. In fact, all our customers must meet federal income eligibility guidelines. We're located in 40 communities. We are in all 7 counties, depending on the programs. And the people who are most unlikely to respond to the census, we're serving them. I actually serve on the Complete Count Commission for Westchester County. I'm a member of the Families Task Force, and I also I'm an active member of the New York State Community Action Association. And we are deeply concerned about those people who are most likely not to respond. In our case at Westcott, we've taken on a strategy, which I explained to our local Complete Count Commission. We're training every staff in our agency, all 600 of them, on the census. Starting next week, your representatives will be coming out to train our executive leadership. And then we're going down department and programs so that everybody is trained. We're also ensuring that every site has enough computer technology to ensure that if someone comes in who has not yet completed a form and would like to do that, we can help them there in our location. And the third thing we're doing, we operate on partnerships. All our programs are delivered through collaborations. And in these various communities, we're working through the meetings that we have to help to spread the word and to get our partners to replicate what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw, yes, please, ma'am. And then, would you like to speak as well? Okay. 2 more. Please say your name for the record because we don't have it currently.
I am Kim Snyder. I live in New Rochelle. I am co-lead for Indivisible New Rochelle, and I'm also on the Westchester Complete Count Committee. I have a question about disinformation and whether the commission is looking into or preparing in any way to address the disinformation a lot through social media. It's probably going to be the main channel, but we know it's going to be there, and I think the environment is ripe for it because of all the stuff around the citizenship question. So what is the New York State Commission doing to counter disinformation?
Our reach is what our reach is. So in our report, we'll include things, common misperceptions or things being put out there that aren't true. We've been very involved, especially on the citizenship question as a collective, I think unanimously on the citizenship question. A lot of this, though, is going to be rules of the road for other trusted communities and others to also be part of that communications effort, which we're going to recommend. So we'll have some of that. There's no way a 15-person commission can possibly be as deep into social media networks, but we're going to work with hopefully recommending to trusted partners about efforts they can do to combat some of the disinformation out there.
Forensics, when disinformation starts to bubble up,
It
needs to be monitored.
Albany, we had a discussion at one of our hearings about some of these issues. So it's something that is going to be very difficult in this day and age to fight, unfortunately. It spreads so fast and captures people's attention. It's already solidified, but we're going to do the best we can with the resources and the efforts that we do.
Brett.
We've got a cybersecurity expert working with the commission, which will be part of the response to the disinformation. It's one way that will happen. And we're looking to establish a relationship both across the state and with the Census Bureau on how to quickly cross-communicate when something happens.
That'll be important.
But the commission will recommend it. We then have to implement it at a different level.
Just want to make sure it's getting addressed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Toby. And I really mean that seriously. If you do have those, Rich, as the executive director, serves on the commission, but he is also the point person for the state of New York on all census coordinating activity. So if Rich doesn't have the answer, he has access to the entire state and in many cases the local complete count commissions. So Rich really is the person. I think your name is online. If it's not online, we'll add it for you, and we want you to call him, his home number especially. But seriously, Rich is the person to reach out to with those efforts.
And we will have I doubt if one person can handle this, but we'll have a process and a way to when someone hears something, they can start the process of finding out what's going on and to respond to it.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Tamara Stewart. I am the point person for Mount Vernon's Complete Count Committee. There are a few things that people have said tonight and a couple of other conversations I've had that I want to share because maybe some of it will give you some ideas. One, I would like, I think in my community, one of the things that would be helpful in terms of funding would be tablets. We've got different groups and different types of people who are willing to help, and we're going to recruit more volunteers, and the ability to, let's say, go knock on someone's door and sit down with a tablet, which is a lot friendlier than like a laptop or something to, sit down and be able to do that is one thing. I had a conversation with somebody at a conference I was at this past weekend, and she said that one of the strategies that they had employed when they were trying to get out the vote was block captains. So rather than people feeling overwhelmed, if there are people who really kind of know their neighbors on a block and therefore they're a trusted source, that's one of many strategies that could be employed to try to engage more people. I was very happy to hear about the young people who are interested and excited. I had a thought that maybe we could do some skits. Maybe we could have our young people do them or create some, maybe with some different scenarios, something brief, 5 minutes. But I could really see young people taking to a more theatrical approach, and that also working in some other communities as far as we're trying to get out and talk to people and engage people differently. I also thought we should probably have YouTube video out there. And have we thought about a census rap? Do we have a census rap? Anybody? But that's something else that we could probably have engage our young people in, where it would speak to them and allow them to speak to each other. We really should, particularly as we're trying to bridge the age gap, we should pair our digital natives with our maybe not so digital seniors, because that's really like a natural pairing. So I really just wanted to kind of share those thoughts with you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm told we have two more folks. The gentleman with the hat.
Good evening, members of the Commission, and to the larger community that's gathered here this evening. My name is Dr. Robert Baskerville. I am a longtime resident of Westchester County and also a professor of sociology at Bronx Community College and City University of New York. I rise to speak to ask if the Commission has considered piggybacking on the existing infrastructure within the City University system, as well as the State University system. As many of you know, because you're academics, the university system is required to operate an institutional review board that regularly conducts surveys of the experiences of the student population. Specifically, I wanted to remind you that at the conclusion of every semester, the City University administers a student faculty evaluation survey, which could be easily piggybacked on, I at least think, in order to try to gather more information, and it may overcome some of the challenges of trust, precisely because at least when students have a good experience with their faculty members, they're likely to place trust in the security of the information that they're providing. So I just wanted to offer that recommendation and to say hello to my former colleague, Andy Beveridge.
Very much.
Nice to see you.
You're our closer. You're not our closer. You're our setup person.
Okay, I'll set up for the closer. Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Lenore Friedlander. I am assistant to the president at Local 32BJ, which is a labor union. We represent about 4,000 workers in this county and about over 85,000 in New York State. We are fully in support of a complete count. We want to make sure every person is counted. There were a lot of eloquent reasons given about why that's important, so I won't restate that. But we are also committed to educate our members, work with community organizations, local governments, allies, in order to facilitate the census, educate our members about the census, We have a unique range of members. Many of our members are immigrant members. Many are not native English speakers, and so we have those challenges to deal with. We also have members in 500 residential buildings right here in Westchester County who work in buildings where probably 100,000 or more Westchester County residents live. And we will be reaching out to our employer partners in those buildings to see if there was a way we can support education and information out beyond our membership in those buildings. We don't want to get our members in trouble for leafleting without permission or providing information without permission. But if we can partner with our employers and the managers of those properties, we have an ability to reach thousands and thousands of residents of the county. So we're here in support. We think this is important, and we need to get information out in many, many languages to make sure people really understand. We have lots of members who are fearful of opening their door, fearful of going out, and a wide range of literacy levels and comfort on technology. Thank you.
To that point, Secretary Rosado and she's not here tonight, but Commissioner Reardon are leading the charge on the labor front. That's one area we haven't talked a lot about at the hearings, but we've had testimony where this is a campaign, as district captains. That is what the labor movement does well, has been organizing folks, especially in disadvantaged communities. So we're going to wrap into not only just our formal recommendations, but how the state implements and local governments implement and do the count, the labor movement. So thank you for attending that. And that is something that Hector was pushing for vigorously on the commission, and we're glad you're helping to continue his great work. So thank you.
Absolutely, and we're happy to reach out to other unions as well.
Thank you. We have the closer, I was told. The closer. All right.
College, it was like an honor to close the place, but I don't know if it's the same anymore. I don't know if that's the same anymore.
It's a little bit of a different thing.
Yeah, I get that feeling. Yeah. So I'll be fast. My name's Lorraine Campanelle, and I'm the director of Cabrini Immigrant Services in Dobbs Ferry. And I agree with everything that's been said so far with the immigration question and the fear. I mean, the fear is very real, and we've been trying so hard to start now letting them know the 2020 census is coming, and they really connote it with an ICE raid. You know, it's like if I put this in, the whole idea of going into cyberspace, it's almost like they're convinced it goes right to the ICE office. So one of the issues we find is language. Everything, it's like a roadblock. You know, you want them to fill it out. It's online. So many don't have access. Many don't speak English. The literacy levels, even in their own languages, might be low. So if we can have anything written in other languages, I think there's a little bit of comfort for them if they see something in their languages. It is a big issue for them. So any materials that could be done. And again, we're dealing with the same issues of multiple families. How do we convince them that their landlord won't get in trouble and they won't get thrown out? Because now they know that it's an illegal apartment. So those are the kind of real fears. I heard a lot about, money. Money is very important. We're a not-for-profit agency also. But I think also we need to look at the human person and how can we make them feel honestly safe that, we're telling them they can come to our agency to fill it out. We'll help them. Because a lot don't have access to the internet. But how do they know when they leave my building they're going to have an apartment? That's how strong the fear is, that they really think it's so immediate. So I think language would be a big help, and also anything you could do to convince us to be able to convince them that it's safe.
The translational services is something that has come up repeatedly, and what Commissioner Reardon, Department of Labor, and the Office of New Americans, which Secretary Rosado runs, I think the Census Bureau, correct me, is going to translate to 90-something.
Not quite.
So they're fewer than what we have in New York. The state labor department and other places have translational services for more than 200 languages. So one of the things we're trying to do an overlay for in our final report is what are those services that state or county or other governmental partners can provide So when we do have recommendations for the funding that does exist, because the state has done 20, New York City has done a pot, and other local communities have, by the way, as well, they can focus those resources on other areas and activities, so you're not just duplicating those services. So hopefully we'll have more information for our final. We're pulling that all together, but that's one area that has come up repeatedly to give people comfort in what they're reading. So
Can I just say a couple of things? I think to leave the meeting, so the person who said that we should stop misinformation, essentially we should stop it here. And the first piece of misinformation, there are actually 2 surveys out that have the citizenship question on them. One of them is the American Community Survey, which I think is the one that the legislator was talking about. The other is a test of the citizenship question, which they sent out to 480,000 people, half with it and half without it. So this is causing, kind of massive confusion. The actual census itself, the actual census form, people should realize only has, well, it depends on how you count it, but it only really has 7 questions. It has a name, which, relationship within the household, age, sex, whether you're Hispanic or not, and then race categories. So there's really, and whether or not, is there a structure there? So they don't really collect very much data. So, one thing you have to realize is that it's, I know there's a lot of concern about cyber this and that, and every time, and I don't want to make, don't want to single out WLS, which I admire, but I'm sure that people come into WLS and use Facebook. I'm sure that people come into WLS and use Google. And they just grab all your information and sell it. So you have to realize that the census is very mild. It only asks for a little bit of information, and it doesn't really, the information is absolutely secure. They're under, if they share it outside, like, for example, with the Department of Homeland Security or whatever, they can go right to jail. There's a $250,000 fine. That's the sort of thing that they really do protect. And so I don't think that's, I think that should be, I understand the fear, though. I understand it completely, but I don't think, you should, if you try to dispel it, you're doing the right thing. And then, the other thing that you should know is that they're going to actually try to collect citizenship using administrative records, and this is part of Trump's executive order. But there are those of us, including me, and including a lot of demographers, and including people at the Census Bureau, former people at the Census Bureau that were doing the administrative record work, that think this is just going to fail. So, and it may go to court if they try to use it for redistricting. So, so there's still real serious problems with the upcoming census. They have not allocated enough money for their outreach. They expect a lot higher number of imputed households than they did last time. There's still this issue of trying to put the administrative records, using administrative records for citizenship on it. That wouldn't come from you, but I think it's very bad. And so I would say that for groups that are trying to help this happen, you really got to get the count. If they want to skip other questions, well, they should get the count by the household. That's really what counts. So if they're scared about giving up race, giving up their thing, they don't necessarily. I don't think you have to put down your address exactly, but I think that you have to realize that there's already massive misinformation out there. Some of it emanating from the White House.
When will we be able to see what the actual census looks like, even if it's a preview, so that we can explain to people exactly what's on there?
It's actually on the website now, on the census.gov. Oh, yeah.
This is what it is. Get anything else?
Yeah, if you get something from the Republican Party, that's not a census. So, I've gotten that, so, and then just a final comment as the only Westchester resident on the commission, I'm very pleased to see this turnout, and aside from help. Are you Westchester? I'm sorry.
Disparaging for other commissioners. Andy.
There you go. False information.
But yeah, I'm sorry to spread disinformation. But I also wanted to say that, among other things, aside from working against Portchester in 2011 or 20, that wasn't really against Portchester, 2011 or 2012, I actually drew the lines for the Westchester County Legislature. And so I hope that the representatives of the Westchester County Legislature or the Westchester County Legislature herself are pleased with the lines I drew.
As you can see, we're a bunch of independent commissioners for real. I would like to thank first you all for coming up. Sir. One more. The closer.
My name is John Bailey. I live in White Plains, and I run the Citizen Net Reporter website. I normally don't talk at public hearings, but I'm concerned. I think, number one, that we should involve all the county governments and the towns and the villages and cities in the city, locating all the residential residences that should be checked. The cities, each individually, should contact the owners of those buildings and get counts of who lives in their buildings. This is something they can do very easily. They do it every year at tax time, and it is unreasonable to expect people to pour into neighborhoods using voting rolls, often out of date. And so, therefore, I seriously think that this has to be approached with the cities, and we also need to know exactly when the census is going to be mailed out. Now, another item. My feeling is that this business of undercounting Latinos and Spanish-speaking people is very serious. It's very serious because of the illegal housing problem in the county, all over the county. And unless you can identify those landlords who own those properties and get counts of who lives in their buildings, which they probably won't divulge, then you're not going to have a count of this very vulnerable population. And I feel the cities and the towns are responsible for showing everybody who's going to take the census or go door to door, every residence in their city, whether it's 2 to 4 family, whether it's huge apartments, they need to do that, and they need to give you lists of what you can expect. Okay? Thank you. That's my suggestion.
I just want to clarify that while there may be issues of illegal housing, it's not a Latino issue. It's a Westchester issue. I just want to clarify that. Yes, I think. Yes. Well, I don't know about that. But I know that it's not a Latino problem. I know that it's a Westchester problem. And more importantly, for all the communities that could potentially be undercounted, we have to work together. And I want to say that I wasn't going to say anything to close, but I will say this, that I am a Westchester resident for 22 years. I own a home in Westchester for 22 years. And that as we stand here as commission members, we also represent, I do, and Rich Toby does, what we call an enterprise of state agencies that are also going to come to the table with everything that we can do through all the communication we have on a day-to-day basis with the public, messages, encouraging people not just to fill out the census, that's the big agenda, but also to come to us with issues, problems as they come up. Next year is going to be a tough environment already. There will be some campaign going on, and there will be a lot of tension, a lot of discussion about all these issues that are making people nervous. So we have to work together extra hard this time in 2020, more than 2010, more than any other time. And that's why it's important to use appropriate vocabulary, to be sensitive, and to be very, very targeted in terms of achieving a correct count.
would normally have people go, but we're running late, and I don't want to just keep it. Well, yes, I think she was replying to the comment of another person. I got it. Everybody's got it. Thank you all for attending this. These meetings are important. They help drive awareness to a very critical issue for New York, especially on the count that was mentioned by the county executive. I want to thank the New York Power Authority and their head, Gil Quinones, for hosting us here, so let's give them a round of applause. Thank you to our partners at SUNY and KQ for presenting tonight. And the website, so you all have it, is www.ny.gov/Census 2020. We're going to post the census questions on so folks can see it, so you have access to it. And the next meeting is July 31st at Brooklyn Borough Hall at 6 p.m. 6 p.m., July 31st, Brooklyn Borough Hall. Thank you all for attending tonight. This was a great session. Good night.